Paulie Martin, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
God, we've been friends for a while.
Yeah. It's got to be around 20 years.
Right, and I used to do the open jams with you, right? That's where we kind of hooked up musically.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of them. A lot of open jams.
Yeah. Are you still doing them?
Yeah, every now and then. In fact, every now and then my band hosts an open jam. We're trying to get a regular thing. You know, it's kind of like a rehearsal night for us. You know, so get to play with a lot of different musicians.
Yeah,
have fun, and and still have a little bit of the have the club atmosphere.
And what instrument do you play? Harp. Well, you're a harp player. I know that. I can just come out and say it.
Harmonica.
And you've been doing that for how long?
Oh, I've been doing that since I was in the service, and that was, I think, my first harmonica I picked up probably in 1975.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
It is.
And then how did you progress to where you are today?
Yeah. I mean, that's an incredibly long story, but...
hey, we got time. Go ahead.
So, it's kind of funny. The one thing I think about all the times, I was a designer and a harmonica player almost the same length of time. I was actually a harmonica player first, and I was in the service, and there was a guy in the barracks, this kid from Boston, and he played harmonica, and he knew a couple riffs or something, and I was like, wow, that really sounds cool, This is before I was even into the blues. I didn't even growing up in a lily white suburb of Chicago, I didn't even know that Mecca was, 30 miles away. So, I was listening to, Led Zeppelin, Faces, the Stones, the Beatles, Jay Giles, all these bands that were, they were covering songs that were written by guys that lived right down the road from where I grew up. But when I was in the service, I was stationed out in Maine, and there's a kid that I said, he had a harmonica and he was playing, and I thought that was really cool. I didn't own one yet. And then I went home on leave one year, and I think that was in '75. And my buddy Danny Austin gives me a call. We're going to go out a Wednesday night, I think it was, and there was a club, I think it was called the Little Bighorn, and it was a Wednesday night, and we went there, and it was Eddie the Chief Clearwater from Chicago, great blues guy, and he's playing, and this was all new to me. I'm like, holy cow, this is amazing. So we're watching. The place was pretty packed for a Wednesday night, and then they stopped playing at the end of the night, and people were calling for an encore. Maybe it was a Saturday because it was too packed, and they were calling for an encore, and he didn't come back out. And my buddy Danny's little brother, Mike, who's no longer with us, but I give him credit for getting me started, he goes, oh, this is bullshit. And he goes down to the front of the stage. The stage is elevated about, 3 feet up. And he grabs a mic stand and pulls it down to the dance floor and starts just riffing on a harmonica. And I stood there with my jaw down to the ground going, holy crap, he's either going to get the crap beat out of him by a bouncer or something, And all of a sudden, Eddie Clearwater comes out and plugs in his guitar, and these two are just jamming together. Then the bass player and drummer come back out, the house lights go down, and they just rock this encore. And he's just playing some little shuffle riff, And it was an incredible, incredible time. And so then I'm back in the barracks up in the tip of Maine. I had Canada on 3 sides of me, and we were way up there. And I remember laying in my bunk just staring at the ceiling going, man, did that really just happen? It had such an impact on me. So then I went and bought a harmonica, and just started, basically self-teaching myself. I sucked, I wasn't good for a long, long time, till I went and got out of the service, I was driving truck around the Chicagoland area, and I think it was Muddy Waters' album, Hard Again. I got that album, and I played it over and over and over, just jammed to it, you know, playing harmonica. I probably played the same key, didn't matter, you know. But that's what started me, you know. I got going that way, and that was, you know, like I said, I wasn't even a designer yet. I was doing art, but I wasn't a designer. I was a truck driver at the time, but I was, you know, that's when I started playing harmonica.
Did you carry one of your harmonicas with you all the time?
Yeah, I usually had one key with me, you know.
So how many harmonicas do you have to have?
Well, depending, you know, so you know, the major keys basically. I'll have 7 harmonicas for basic gigs, like if I'm playing with Robert Allen Jr. or other bands, you know. And then there's some other bands where you know, the singers like to sing a half step down. Mm-hmm. So then I have a whole nother step, you know, a whole nother set, you know, A flat, B, you know, and all the flattened keys, you know. And so I have that set as well. But I you know, I don't throw them away. I should, but
how long do they last?
Yeah, it depends. Some keys longer than others. Obviously, you play them more. But it's kind of weird. It's always it's like there's one hole in a harmonica, the number 3. You can actually get 5 notes out of it. Mm. You bend it on the draw. You can get 3 notes bending it. You can get 2 notes on blowing in it. So it's, you know, it gets a lot of work out. And that one usually is the one that goes, that key, you know, that one hole, that reed.
Does that take a lot of wind to play like that?
It does when you don't know what you're doing. I mean, when I first started out, I would crank the record and I would just, you know, it's not the blowing, it's the socking. Oh, yeah. You know, those draw notes, they'll kick your ass after a while.
So I remember, like, when you started playing a lot, like with open jams and things like that, we talked about it. And you said you were taking lessons at a certain point from a guy in the Chicago area, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, very renowned player, Joe Falisco. You know, he's a great player, but beyond that, the influence is just around Milwaukee. I don't know if there's a lot of people realize this, but there are some great players in Wisconsin, all over the place, you know, and even, you know, the young and up and comers are just blowing my mind, you know. But Jim Lieben, he's like the father of great players, yeah. Not only in Milwaukee, but everywhere I've traveled. When I lived in California, I met Rick Estrin from Little Charlie and the Nightcats, a great player, one of my favorites, big influence on me. I booked him for a gig, and we got talking, and I told him where I was from. And he goes, "Oh, you know who Jim Lieben is?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, I know Jim, you know." And I swear that conversation happens to me everywhere. I could be in Florida, it could be California, it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very renowned. And Joe Falisco, who I was taking lessons from at the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago, he said that Jim Lieben was, in his opinion, probably the greatest living blues harmonica player right now, you know.
I believe it. I used to go see him down on the east side.
Yeah.
You know, and he had his band there, Short Stuff, and
yeah.
That guy was just, it was packed.
Yeah.
People loved him.
Yeah, I got some good photos. I saw Short Stuff at Summerfest, and I saw him in Illinois, actually, too. Yeah, great band. And, you know, his son, Matt, is a great drummer.
He is.
And I'll tell you, the first times I played with Robert and we had Matt on drums, I was like intimidated to be standing in front of the son of Jim Lieben, you know.
Yeah, but that's all right. You deserved it because you worked at it and you got good.
Yeah.
So, but you have your own band today, right?
Yeah.
And what's the name of it?
Doc Martin and His Lost Souls.
And it's been around for how long now?
We've just been together a little over a year. We kind of, took a step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Where we have a new drummer. The last drummer left the band, and so, we have a lot of songs that he's got to, learn. So we've been kind of backed off of gigging a little bit, but we're there again. So.
So you gig around basically Milwaukee area.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's really, I haven't seen your band, but I've seen videos of it, and you guys play a little bit different genre. It's more rock, right?
Yeah. So kind of going, full circle to where I started. So the bands I grew up listening to. And some of the newer ones that are, more considered blues rock. I hate gender or genre defining, because it's rock and roll, but that music that I grew up, even though a lot of these songs may have been written by Willie Dixon, I knew him from Led Zeppelin.
So when you're playing, you're doing more rock. And you're talking about
songs.
there's probably different crowds when you say you play blues with like Robert Allen Jr.
Yeah.
Or when you play with your band, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so, when I go to like clubs where there's a blues band playing it, and I love that to death, and I love playing with Robert Allen Jr. When we're covering Albert King and B.B. King, Junior Wells, and we're doing blues songs. Well, my band is doing a lot of those same songs, but they're covered by Eric Clapton, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and those guys. And I'm noticing that there's 2 different crowds, and I kind of want to. My goal to develop this band is to have both those crowds, in some form together, do enough, enough blues songs. One thing about the people that diss blues, it's because they don't understand it. And I'm talking about the friends that I know of that go to rock shows and stuff like that. They think, blues is all this 1-4-5 and that's all there is, right? And but that's not true. And it's just I don't know. It's just it boils down, actually, to me. It just boils down to, are you a good entertainer or not?
Do you notice? Okay, there probably is different crowds for rock versus blues, and probably, correct me if I'm wrong, the rock crowd is probably more dominant in this city than the blues crowd.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, historically, you look at, go back to, the Fillmore West back in those days, and these rockers were getting very popular, and the guys that brought them there, they would honor them. They'd have them open up, but the rock crowd was just so huge, and I think, it's like I have that on my poster that in the Muddy Water song, the blues had a baby and they named it rock and roll, and that's kind of.
That's where it all started with blues.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And everything everybody's playing today, first of all, the big guys, big musicians, they know that too.
Oh yeah.
And they respect that. Like the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards, that's where he came from too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Chuck Berry riff, or any of those guys. You look at guys like ZZ Top. They'll tell you right off where they same 3 dudes, same 3 chords.
I got to tell you a quick story. When I was like 18, 19 years old, I worked at something that was similar. It was a festival similar to Summerfest here in Milwaukee. It was called Chicago Fest. Did you ever hear of that?
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and my cousins ran that festival, and I was on the Navy Pier, and I used to meet all these big musicians because he put me backstage. I was like the grunt. I was bringing in the beer and the booze and every food and all that stuff, working with other people, of course. And I met so many musicians, and one of them was the guy you're talking about, okay? And he was so cool. He died, I think, a few years ago. Chuck Berry, didn't he die?
Chuck, yeah.
He died, right? Yeah. And I remember I met him, and I was standing in the office because he played two shows, an earlier show and an evening show. And it rained in the evening, right? And I'm sitting in this trailer with a guy that was writing the checks. He wrote him a check, and he says, Chuck Berry said, I should get paid for both shows. He goes, why? He goes, because I showed up. Right? That's what I did. And then I'm talking to Chuck Berry while the guy's writing the check. And I said, boy, did you see that big article in the Chicago Tribune about you? He goes, I got 3 scrapbooks like this, he said, from the course of my career. And he goes, I saved every one of them. So that was my Chuck Berry story.
Yeah, that's cool. I saw Willie Dixon at Chicago Fest. And he was a big headliner. And one of the most impressive shows I've ever seen. And he crossed over into, I shouldn't say he crossed over, he started it. I mean, he wrote When the Levee Breaks, the Lemon Song, all these big Led Zeppelin hits. He wrote so many songs. And when I saw him at Chicago Fest, here's this old black guy dressed in a white suit, white hat, he's got a cane, and he's got these 2 rockers, long-haired white boys on either side of this massive stage. It looked like, it was unbelievable distance between the 2. And in the typical Chicago blues fashion, the band starts it up, and they do a song or a couple songs, and they're building it up to this crescendo, and here comes Willie Dixon walking out in the middle of the song, and he gets to the mic stand right at the right time, and he turns around and the band breaks, and he breaks into a song, and it was just, the crowd went nuts. And that's what I said, it's about the entertainment sometimes. It's, having all the fancy riffs and everything is nice to have, but people are going to yawn if you're not entertaining them.
That's right. And you really, I think, broke in, as far as I know, maybe you can correct me, broke in with the blues with Robert Allen, didn't you, in this town? And Robert Allen Jr., if people don't know, he's a pretty big blues guitarist. He won Whammy Awards, and he is from Milwaukee.
Yeah. Oh, he's phenomenal. He's there's never a gig. I played with him for over 20 years, and there's never a gig where I'm not, just in awe of what I'm seeing him do. And what's so neat about it is it's so off the cuff, He's just like, he's doing stuff just because, he didn't do it. He's just feeling it, Right. And it's incredible. I love it, And sometimes there's this magical moments when, I get to be part of that with him. When we're cutting heads, oh my gosh, we've had some great moments. He might not remember, but I do.
Tell me about that big gig you did with him. We talked about that before we started taping this.
Yeah. So when I was a designer at Harley-Davidson, they had this contest for Harley-Davidson employees that were musicians. And, this was the Harley-Davidson 105th anniversary, 2008. And they had a contest. And musicians from Kansas City, the plant in Kansas City, Tomahawk, Wisconsin, York, Pennsylvania, all these different facilities, they can all enter it. And so I'm at a jam one day, and I was telling Robert, I go, hey, they got this competition, and it's for musicians that are, employees. And I go, you'd be interested? He goes, oh yeah, So we sent in a tape, and, not knowing what to expect. There was a few different venues around the lakefront that all these bands were gonna get to play. I think even Eric Buell from Buell Motorcycles, he was a senior engineer at Harley for years. I think he may have been in that. But anyway, we had this contest, and one day I get a call from this guy in marketing, and he goes, "Hey, Paul, how'd you like to, play a gig for the 105th anniversary?" And I said, "That's why I got in it, man." And he goes, "Well, we got you, playing at the lakefront." And I go, "Oh, cool," And
Which was the big stage, right?
Well, there were a bunch of stages,
Okay.
And he's going, "We're going to have you open up for this little band out of New Jersey," and I'm going, "You're joking, right?" Because I knew who the headliner was, and he goes, "Nope." So we got 30 minutes. We went over a little bit, but we got a 30-minute slot ahead of Bruce Springsteen.
Wow, what an experience.
Yeah, 80 to 90,000 people there, I think.
Did you get to meet him?
I did not meet him. I met almost everybody else in the band. I saw him. I was right near him, right on the side of the stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was incredible. It was, and my regret is that, I wasn't as good as I could have been. You're always pretty critical of your playing,
But there's a video that Robert put up on YouTube for that gig. Because he only played there once, right, in the big stage?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably in that video.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, man, he owned it. And of course you had Dave Brown on drums. Guy's unbelievably great. Yeah. And Mitch Mitchell, I think it was, on the bass player. It was just a fantastic time. Even for 30 minutes, 38 minutes is what we ended up.
What did that feel like, playing in front of that many people?
It was kind of interesting. I thought I was going to be a nervous wreck, but you get up there and it's like wallpaper. There's so many people. It was like wallpaper. I was more we played at the Nashotah Clubhouse that night afterwards, in a very intimate setting, almost like a jazz club. It's now called Booze Hags. And we played, and there was tables sitting right up by the stage. I was more nervous there. Somebody sitting right in front of you, watching you. But
so how did the crowd accept you guys?
It sounded good to me. Yeah. We got a few gigs out of it, and yeah, it was fun.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
so people should know, and I'm sure a lot of people do already, that you worked for Harley for a number of years.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
Oh, it was incredible, career at Harley-Davidson. It's kind of funny. I had a career before that. Then I come to Harley, and I have a 17-year career there, and I'm starting to try to run a band. So I'm just one after the other. But I started at Harley-Davidson, like I said before, right around the 100th anniversary in 2003. Now, it was interesting how that all came about. I was doing some contract work. I moved from California back to the area. I was in the Chicagoland area. And Ray Dre, he was the director of styling, hit me up. He needed help. And so I started doing some contract work. Well, then he got promoted, and then I ended up he asked if I wanted to interview for the job. And they put it out worldwide for this position, so I thought I didn't stand a chance. However, I had one foot in the door because I already did contract work, so I knew the processes pretty well. And then in one of my interviews with Willy G. Davidson, he was the grandson of one of the Davidsons, one of the founders of Harley-Davidson, and big motorcycle nut, as he should be. We were talking design for a while, and then we started talking about motorcycles. I was talking about, my first Rupp Roadster and my Honda 70, and we're just laughing and yucking it up about riding and stuff. And then, then I had another interview where I had to show design and all that stuff. They gave me an assignment. But I think that interview with Willy was pivotal, because one of the things that he said to me when they hired me, he goes, the one thing, he goes, you got gas in your veins, and that was a big thing for him. And I did, and I grew up on that stuff. And another part of it that found out later is he's a huge fan of the blues. In fact, I got a bunch of CDs in the corporate jet that I gave to Willy, and these guys are flying across country listening to, Johnny Knoxville out of Sacramento, California. So that was big. But my career as a designer there was incredible. I got to meet people and do things and travel that, are just, it was a blessing. Some of my greatest rides, going, flying down to Key West with Willy and 4 other guys, and then taking 3 days to get to Daytona Bike Week, and just going all over, riding all over the state. All the trips to Sturgis, going to European Bike Week in Falkersee, Austria, riding, in the Alps and all that stuff. And, validation rides going from, Talladega to Phoenix. This is the stuff outside of the studio. I got to do a lot of that. Not as much as I hoped. Some of my colleagues were doing it way more than I was. But it was a lot of fun. And then the design work, I got to meet some very creative colleagues on, like we worked with Ford on the Harley Ford trucks. I was part of that. I designed the graphics for those things. And so going to Detroit 2-3 times a year and just being in that culture was fantastic.
So your job specifically entailed what?
The things that I had to go to work for every day were the graphics, medallions, the 3-dimensional medallions, the graphics. Anywhere you saw branding or anything on a motorcycle, I had to design it or lay it out, and then the colors, picking the colors year after year. We didn't use an automotive model. We used, guys that were motorcycle guys that, we picked the colors. And that all changed later on after, when I got near retirement. But those were my primary things. Now I got to tell you, on the Harley-Davidson logo on the tanks, all of that stuff was hand drawn. We didn't type in typefaces or anything like that. It was original art, and that's what my first career was. I was a typographer and a sign painter, and a pinstriper, and that kind of paved the way for my job at Harley as a designer.
So when you created artwork for a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, how long did it take to go through the process before it was actually placed on the motorcycle?
Oh boy, it could take a year, maybe more. Color took even more than a year, but just like a medallion. First coming up with a design in 2D on paper, then reviewing it amongst your peers and leadership, and then dealing with engineering and integration. I don't know, what's the right word?
Integration.
Integration. There's safety things and all this kind of stuff, that has to go into it. And it would take some time. That's why when we do a medallion, it stays on there for a few years. And then we'd refresh it after a few years.
Did you meet any big, say like movie stars ever that had Harley bikes and they'd come to the plant?
Oh yeah.
You have any stories?
Yeah, I've met, Jesse James. I met him a number of times, and it just so happens that Jesse James uncle was one of my best friends in California, and he was a sign painter, and his name was John Harl. Big guy. He looked like Jesse James, but bigger, you know. And I remember when I met, I think it was in 2008. It was at an anniversary when I met Jesse James, and I said, "Hey Jesse, you know, I know your uncle." And he goes, "My uncle?" And I go, "Yeah, your uncle John and I are really good friends." He goes, John Harlan?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh man," he goes, "that dude used to hold my head underwater in a pool." But I met Tim Allen. I met a lot of people. I met Jay Leno. I met.
What kind of a guy was he?
Well,
was he always funny?
Yeah, he's a pretty serious guy when it comes to automotive and motorcycles and stuff like that. But I didn't spend any time with him really. But I get to meet him, and I'd see a lot of these guys. I'd be on rides with some of them, you know.
Did you mention Peter Fonda?
Yeah.
When we were talking earlier.
Yeah, he was a piece of work. He came in, he was pretty hammered. Really? He was getting interviewed on CNN for Harley-Davidson, you know, or not for Harley, but as a part of the coverage of the event. And,
what was the evolution when Harley sold to AMF, and how did that change things? And essentially, at a certain point, Harley bought it back, right?
Yeah, there's great stories about this if you ever get a chance to go to the Harley Museum in Milwaukee. I'm unclear on when AMF came in. I know that they came in because they felt that, they bought the company thinking that they're in this, sport hobbyist, genre, right? Like bowling, AMF was in all this sports stuff, and they thought motorcycling fit into that. Well, I think after X amount of years, they realized it didn't fit in. They struggled. They were building motorcycles, and they had to ship them to the dealers to get finished. That's how bad it was. And so they were going to go belly up, and then there's 13 guys. One of which was Willy G. Davidson. They bought the company back, and they scraped all their money, and it was like a midnight deal, getting a check to the bank type of thing. I'm not clear on the whole story, but
it came back to Harley-Davidson again, and from then on, it evolved again.
Yeah, in those early years, they struggled. There were tariffs on the Japanese motorcycles coming in because of competition. Those things were like sewing machines. They didn't break or anything. They were great motorcycles. But then Harley's culture started growing and growing, and then there came a point in time when Ronald Reagan was president that the leadership at Harley-Davidson asked, Ronald Reagan, lift the tariffs. We don't need it anymore. Yeah. So that was the beginning of, my generation's, growth with Harley-Davidson.
And then just over the last few years, we're in 2025 right now. I think you said that their sales kind of dropped off.
Yeah, they're not hitting the numbers. I don't get into that part of it. I always thought it was kind of interesting that they, if the analysts look at the numbers, and if you make a projection and you don't meet it, it doesn't look good. So just lower the bar. I don't know if that's how it works or not, but it seems to me like Harley-Davidson is struggling.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Well, they went through some evolution over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And things got kind of weird.
Yeah, I still think it's a great brand. Great people there. I think it, might come down to leadership, as it usually does, right? Every time a new CEO comes in, and it kind of flips over.
Right.
That's my opinion as a designer, which anybody should take with a grain of salt.
So you're going to play a little song for us, right? You're going to pull out your harp?
Well, I can. Sure.
Yeah, just blow a few things. So
I'm not
people
going to
can
play a
see.
song. I'll just play a riff or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was excellent. You sound like you've been playing for a long time.
I've been playing for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd still hack, but I have fun. People seem to have fun coming to our shows and gigs.
So where could they find information on your band online?
On Facebook, Doc Martin and his Lost Souls.
Right.
Hit us up.
Yeah, go see that band. It's good. Thanks for coming in here. I appreciate it.
You got it,
You're
buddy.
a good guy. And maybe
Thanks,
we'll do
Bob.
another one someday, all right?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, take care.
All right. Thanks, man.